it. We're recording to the cloud. I'm recording the audiobook on Tuesday. We are going live on LinkedIn.
That's an amazing note to start on.
Right? Okay, my lovelies, here we are. It is Thursday. We've missed a few Thursday, and I have missed you. We've had a half-hour warm-up for this session, so it's going to be short, but that's okay because as you know, the way that I've planned the curriculum for this year is that we've got a few sessions to dive into the different topics. And this week, well, this current topic that we are in is tutoring internationally. And there's lots of different modalities for tutoring internationally. So that could be tutors based in the UK supporting students who are abroad. Jenna is extremely distracting with Halloween today, which we absolutely love. I love that thing. We've got one of those. They're 3D printed dragons, and they're so young, and they've got these reticulated spines, so they wriggle. Ooh.
And a spinny end tail.
We went to Comic-Con, and he was making 20 times as much money as any other stall there. He was just raking it in. So international tutoring can be a UK-based tutor supporting students abroad. What else could it be?
Supporting international students in the UK.
Nice.
Going abroad.
Nice.
Support people. If you happen to follow certain people on various platforms, there is definitely a market for it.
I used to do that.
Slightly jealous.
Anything else, Dee?
No.
I can think of one more. Go on, Jenna.
I did hybrid, where I would do a mixture of supporting people from here and then from wherever they were, and sometimes we'd meet in other places.
Nice. Very, very hybrid then. I'm thinking about when you, Dee, where are you right now?
North London.
And where are you usually?
South Coast.
And can your students tell the difference?
No, because I use the same virtual background, so.
Very nice. No. So if you were in the States or Dubai, would they know if you went traveling, basically, is my question.
Not unless I told them, no.
So do you have go on, Jenna.
Is that not more traveling tutoring or remote tutoring rather than international?
Okay, let's go with that. So we want to think about the students who are somewhere else or from somewhere else rather than us. Is that right?
So are we thinking about non-UK students, but they might actually be in the UK?
Yes, that's what Jenna was mentioning, supporting international students who are here. Could you give us an example of that, Jenna?
So, for example, I teach a lot of students who are recently arrived to the UK from like China, for example. We have a lot of Hong Kong students at the moment, or students that are here for boarding school sometimes, whether adults as well, university, asylum seekers, people who've moved with their parents. I also get a handful of students. Pardon?
Go on.
I also used to do this a lot more when I was more actively working within the showbiz industries. But we used to have families who were actors or in various areas of showbiz, either the children, and this is sports as well, professional sports and stuff, could be the children or the parents or whatever, and they'd be here either traveling everywhere or here for periods of time, including military as well.
Interesting.
Thank you.
So I wanted to ask you about pastoral care and that element of supporting those students who are away from their families. And I also want to ask you about those students who are in military families. Presumably you can continue to support them and provide stability for them, even as they're moved from base to base.
It depends.
Whether it's online or in person?
And also the source of things like funding, who set it up and how it's set up, and where they're located. It depends on the type of military family and the type of military person, like the service member.
Okay, fantastic. So if you could give me a sense next of your own experiences. So Jenna's given us a little bit about hers. I'm sure there's a lot more there. And I feel that there's a sort of unfolding that's going to happen in this conversation that's quite informative to people who don't yet tutor students internationally. So Dee, would you mind telling us next, please, what is your experience with international tutoring as broadly as possible?
There are two sides to this. When I was doing well, I still do it, but a lot of the meteorology tuition, it was through a colleague who has an online maritime training business, and so I was doing one-to-one meteorology sessions with students who were preparing for their orals exams, and they were all over the world. So I've been as far as Australia with a New Zealand. I didn't quite get to New Zealand. And going the other way, I've been to the west coast of the States, Central America, Caribbean kind of thing, but everywhere in between. So that's that side. Also students in the UK and Europe. And then on the maths side, my international experience has been working with a tutoring business. They used to live and work in Dubai, and one of them was at an international school, came back to the UK, established the business. So a lot of their clients are in the Middle East. So a number of my students are British families based in Dubai. So the students are British. I have had one or two where the nationalities are different. Where one girl I've been working with for quite some time now, and I think the family are Lebanese, but they're based in Dubai. And I had another lad who I think the family were Iranian, but they were based in Dubai. So
Fantastic.
those are the sorts of experiences that I've had.
Fantastic. Thank you, Helen.
I'm less practiced internationally, but mine has been Europe predominantly, Switzerland for expats, mainly in Geneva. So they are in international schools, be it American or English ones, either studying for the IGCSE and IA levels or for the IB in there. But yeah, usually the parents are English speaking originally and over there for work purposes. A lot of them are UN based, being that Geneva is the UN headquarters. So they are looking for support for an English curriculum or from an English speaker.
Fantastic. Thank you. Coming back to you. Mohammed and Malik, you are very, very welcome here. We prefer that the people who are in this conversation participate actively, which means screens on and unmuted, so that we can hear your contributions. If that doesn't suit you, that's totally fine. Just drop me something in the chat so that I understand. Jenna, I'm coming right back to you because I just wanted you to give us the overview again because as Dee gave us the sort of, in meteorology, she's hit these areas, and in maths, she's hit these areas, and Helen's got this focus on expat. I just want the broad sweep from you so that I can pull on it later.
So for me, having done the tutoring variously for almost 20 years, it has really changed for me. I used to do a lot more international than I do now. I started off doing a lot of traveling governessing and traveling tutoring. So that's traveling with a family around the world, whether that family is traveling for politics or military or business or showbiz or sport or for fun. I've had quite a few families who just like to spend 3 months of the year in the Algarve, for example. And then I've also done on the other side young people who've come over here either with their whole family or by themselves. Usually these are boarders, even if they're here with their families. I had one family where they lived literally 2 minutes walk from the boarding school, but during the week, the young people would live at the school. They would board and be home at the weekends in order to have that full experience. And that can be for a number of different reasons. It could be because, like with some military families, maybe parents aren't always here consistently, or for business, or because they've come for different reasons. I've also done with where young people are home educated. I've worked with young people who are waiting for schools, with young people who are in schools or who have blended families. So for one example, I had parents traveled all the time and the young person lived at home, but was basically alone for most of the year. So the tutor was more of like it was a governessing type thing where you were that parent. And I've also done online with students and hybrid. Like I mentioned, I have one student over in Spain who would do online, and then I'd go over, and sometimes we'd come here and we'd meet in places where they might be on holiday sometimes and things like that. It really depended. So it's a whole range and a whole range of subjects and a whole range of settings, but
Fantastic.
usually complicated.
Okay, and just give me a sense of age as well then, because there's so much variety there. I'm looking also for what the common themes are.
Age, I have done generally these days, my youngest age is 6, 7, but I used to do as young as infants.
Fantastic, thank you. Mohammed, would you like to contribute before we move on? We're talking about what's our experience of supporting students internationally. So that's a student who, where are you based at the moment?
Oh, actually, I'm in Bangkok.
Okay, fantastic. So that, I guess, is the other element that we haven't discussed yet, which is a tutor can be anywhere and be connected with students anywhere, and that becomes really interesting. So, Mohammed, what is your experience of international tutoring, please?
Okay, so far it's going well, but if I talk about their language, I have a huge problem just because of their problem. Just because most of the students can't speak English, most of them, even they can't understand very basic English. So I'm troubling a lot with them. Even English is not my first language, it's my 5th language. I'm teaching mathematics to them, but most of the time I feel so much hard to teach them mathematics. But like, I have a question, that's why I came here. And my question was all about, right, not about a particular students, about single student. It was about the group of the students, because when we teach, we have a group of the students, about 10 to 15 students. So I was getting a better idea that what is the best idea to teach them, to teach a group people, because before that I never teach a group. I was teaching a single student. So I was just came here to get some ideas that how we can
fantastic.
teach a group of the students well.
Fantastic. Mohammed, I'm really, really happy to discuss that with you. We have sessions that we plan around different themes, and I do have group tutoring coming up in a few weeks. I will email you after this call and make sure that I can give you exactly those links. I'm also available to speak with you independently as a member. But what we're going to do here, please stay in the conversation, because what I really want to do is explore those themes that you said about, well, let me tell you what I've heard from you guys just now. Starting with what Jenna was saying, well, time zones, getting paid in different currencies, cultural expectations of the children, of the parents, of education, of the tutor, curricula. So Helen mentioned the IGCSEs and the IB. I'm thinking about fun. I'm thinking about lifestyle. So stages of your life when you can be that governess type, and stages when you can't. Pastoral care, the whole context of boarding school and being able to help a student navigate their context. And then, Mohammed, you brought in the questions of language, of whether, you know, it's easier to teach maths to a student who is not as confident in English as it is to teach, easier than history, let's say, or a different, or a more language reliant subject. And then, of course, groups as well, and what those groups dynamics could look like internationally, whether you would have a group of students from lots of different places and whether that would affect the group dynamics. Do you think I've covered enough for us to dig into?
In 15 minutes?
No, 14.
16.
We might have to repeat this conversation.
Lucky it's recorded. But as I say, you know, each of these topics for the curriculum for the year are great, big and juicy, and they take some percolating as well. So the fact that we've had half an hour to to open these topics and then come back to them next time, it just becomes really helpful. So let's start with the low-hanging fruit. Time zones. Hands up if you have had a no-show or been a no-show because you got confounded with time zones. Okay, how do you avoid it? How do you plan around it? And how do you, you know, talk to yourself about it? Because there is that sort of, you know, we're in GMT.
The problem I had was because I do the Dubai students early afternoon, and
Yes.
then the UK students kick in after school. I'd forgotten I needed to build in a buffer between the Dubai students and the UK students, because when the clocks change in this for BST, they're now an hour later.
Just for a
and
few weeks?
Well, no, the clocks change into BST in March, and they're now an hour later through until they've just changed.
Do the
back
clocks
to...
not change in Dubai?
No.
Oh.
So and I fell foul of this because I took the students on in GMT, and then we went to BST, and I had to do a bit of jiggling to actually continue to work with the Dubai students and the UK students. So I now build this buffer in.
Lovely.
So that was interesting.
Perfect example. Helen?
Thankfully, Europe tends to go with the UK. So it's never been, I've not had it yet. But I have got friends in the States, and obviously when even just trying to have conversations with them when the time changes go, because I think they go about, some states go 3 or 4 weeks after us.
I've just discovered that Arizona doesn't change at all.
Arizona doesn't change. I was having a conversation with somebody that's trying to work it out.
I'm going to pause you before you get way more detailed than I need right now.
You've got to give yourself buffer. If you've
got to give yourself buffer, you've got to know what their place looks like and does. Jenna, coming to you in just a second. But the other thing that we didn't mention about time zones is how useful they are, because as Dee said, she does all her Dubai students in the early afternoon and then all the UK-based students in the evening. And one of the best advantages of international tutoring is you can find daytime work, which can increase your income. Jenna?
It's also about the way you communicate about it and when you communicate about it. I got to the point that as part of my onboarding process, before we not the onboarding point where we're getting stuck into stuff and transitioning to doing stuff, but the bits before that, when we're going through what's going to go in the contract, what's going to be the setup and designing everything, because for us it tends to be a little bit of a longer process. We actually now put it as part of that process as to how for UK based students, even how did your family, how does the young person in particular react to and cope with time change, especially because I work with a lot of neurodivergent students who are a lot more likely to struggle with it.
Right.
And so that's kind of built into the process of onboarding, and we do that for international as well. How would you like to navigate things like clocks changing and stuff like that? And it's put into the contract, and we have like summaries and stuff, and we send out reminders, and it's one of the
reminders.
Yes. So we have various systems set up, because I have to do it for myself. I have to set up reminders for myself, and we used to use until very recently an online platform for scheduling and billing and stuff like that. So that would automatically do a bunch of that. So it would look like your local time zone. And that kind of things like that helped. And I would set up auto reminders.
Okay, so hold on a second. So so what I'm hearing that's important here is inclusive practice, and just understanding that the time zones don't only confuse you, they also confuse your student. So time changes, time differences. And I Mohammed, is there anything else you want to bring onto this, just the simple question of times when you're working internationally?
Exactly, I feel, because I teach some students from Canada online, I teach students from Ireland, and I have students from Australia. So of course I pay.
Fantastic.
But the main thing is that how we can handle it. Sometimes it becomes difficult, but the main thing is there is a problem in the time zone, and we need to manage them according to our schedules.
Yeah.
It is a problem.
Yeah, and as Jen is saying, to plan for it, to anticipate it is really wise, and Dee learned that the hard way. Go on, Jen.
One quick thing to add
Yeah.
to that is that it's not just time zones and clocks changing, it's also like different places will have different term dates, different term structures, different celebratory periods and things like that, and adapting for those, right?
Perfect, perfect. Just on the technical level, we're going to come to celebrations another time, Miss Halloween. We'll come to it. You. Is that Beth? Is she going to say hi to us? Hello, Bethy. Right. So another easy one, I think. Currency. Getting paid, setting prices, and how your prices reflect where you're living and where they're living. What is expensive in one place might not be considered as expensive in another place, and what the expectations around that are. Helen, I'm sure you're charging double in Geneva than
I wish.
Right, exactly.
I wish.
It is.
someone is charging someone double.
That one's through an agency, so they
I
set.
got it.
So on that one, I find that really hard, that one, because there are places in the world where I'm going to pick a random round number now, where £50 here is a completely different value compared to £50 somewhere else.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
it not that it just in what you can get for that money
Yes.
and what the
Cost of living.
average, yeah, thank you, and the wage rate and
Yeah.
all those sorts of things. But at the same time, you are paying for my experience and my time. That's what you're paying for. And I haven't yet come to a place of comfort to be able to lower the rates for a different place, because it takes away from somebody that can pay my normal rate. So
Yeah.
it's a bit of a battle on that one. There are methods for being paid internationally that you can work with to get that payment, but the cost of it is the challenge. I think it's not the delivery of how you get money from A to B.
Yeah.
It's what it's worth. That's
And I think, as you're just saying that, and you're saying, I don't feel comfortable with, which I think is really, really healthy. I think it's also worth remembering that there are plenty of people who will charge £5 an hour. And if that family wants to employ that person, then they can, because the entire world is available to them. So if they're choosing you, as long as they're choosing you knowing what your value is, that's their prerogative. Jenna.
There's also the thing that helped for me to get my head around that conundrum that you've got there, Helen, is experiencing the other side of it, where the places that have a much higher cost of living than we do, and that kind of difference there, in that sometimes people choose the UK-based tutors because they are cheaper in that sense, in that we have a lower general pricing point because we've got a lower cost of living in that comparison, and what they're used to paying, and that kind of helped.
Sorry, can you give us a location for that?
Some areas of America, for example, I found that they were just ready to pay a lot more, or we were really cheap to them. Canada, particularly. I think my specific experiences were also on that side a mixture of ultra high net worth and high net worth clients as well, so that made a real difference to that feeling, because, for example, a particular family I'm thinking of that were Russia based, for them they were ready to pay significantly more local, like if they were going locally, than that, both because they were already international in Russia, and so for them everything was that much more expensive, and just socially that was what they were the norm.
Very nice, very nice. So hold on, because we're unpacking the value here. So what just to go back to Helen's point again, and where I said, you know, there are £5 tutors. It's online that's created this question, which is an obvious thing to say, but it does mean that if you think about 10 years ago, if you wanted a tutor, you had to find somebody local. The fact that that's no longer the case, and that the status quo has changed so much that that's normal to us, is significant in terms of pricing, in terms of supply and demand, in terms of evaluating what your value is and what you're giving to the child. Go on, Jenna, I can see that there's something on the tip of your tongue there.
When we talk about access to education in a human rights sense, when we talk about all of that technology wealth and stuff, and a lot of the conversations around providing access to education and the right education and quality education that is opening doors and that is right for young people. Education poverty, that's the word. Nice. So there is lots of stuff going around in the Commonwealth councils and stuff like that, particularly at the moment. We're in mid-season, and that kind of balance of online and post-COVID, particularly, conversations on that side are really, really interesting at the moment. And I feel that that's kind of relevant to some of this.
Absolutely right. So educational poverty, may I ask a really silly question? Is the opposite of that educational wealth? And what does that, is that like those families in Canada who can pay anything you ask for within reason? What is that?
Educational wealth is having access, ready access to education. So that's teachers, resources, references, supplementary things, equipment, literature, all of that is in a way that is readily accessible, readily attainable, that is pardon?
On demand.
Yeah, and that you can have that like engagement around it, like you've got people to talk to about it, you've got that personal touch, you've got a way of making it accessible for you, and that goes as far as stationery and access to computers and having the same access to the same things as your peers and the same and the things that you need access to, and that includes
equity as well, aren't we?
Yeah, exactly, and that includes things like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, that whether that's that you therefore have access to hot food at school, the commute, all of those things. And that also goes into your daily life things and your home responsibilities. So is it education poverty for young girls in rural Pakistan, for example, who have to stay home, they have to bring up their siblings and things like that. They can't just step away, even if they have the school on their doorstep and those sorts of things.
I'm so happy that this is where we got in our 28 minutes, because how sad would it have been if we had just allowed conversation around online tutoring to go straight to, well, actually, I'm not going to pigeonhole I'm not even going to finish that sentence, but the fact that we've come to a place where we're talking about educational wealth as ready access and providing equity in education becomes a much richer conversation. So to come back to Helen's point of, I can't reconcile myself to charging less to some you know, I can't reconcile myself, sitting under that is this sense of moral purpose, isn't it? This sense that but I really want to reach the right students and I really want to help them. And that's who we are, and that's where we're coming from as educators. We are also needing to pay our own bills, and we are also professionals. And so there's this constant balance that we're living, which is healthy and helpful and changes at different stages. So, you know, when you are retired, Helen, you may have an element of your work that is pro bono. And Jenna, before you were attached, you were able to travel the world as a governess, and I hope put some savings by because of it, right? So there's different different stages. I spoke with one of these residential tutors who said that she was able to buy a house after a couple of years, which was pretty cool.
Yeah, it paid for me to go from fully wheelchair bound to being able to or sort of walk.
Gosh. I mean, if that's not, I mean, that's big, right? That's life
Oh,
changing.
absolutely.
That's life-changing. So, Mohammed, next time, please do come again, and please do keep your camera on, because we really enjoyed your participation. Dee, thank you. Thank you for your contributions, Jenna, and thank you, Helen. I know that we've just scratched the surface, but I think we've said things that haven't been said before already, and that's really, really cool. So let's keep going, and I look forward to seeing you guys next week. Have a lovely weekend. Bye.
Happy Halloween!
Happy Halloween!
And Diwali and everything else that's today.
And Thursday.